What's up, Ramblers? Your favorite CEO is back. And before we begin today's podcast, make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode. And follow Assistance HQ and Offsource HQ across all platforms to stay up to date on the latest content, updates, and more. And remember, if you need a virtual assistant, visit us at offsource.tech. Now, before we begin, a word from our sponsor.
Trying to hit record. Ooh, thank you for that.
No worries.
Hey guys, welcome back to another wonderful episode of The Ramblings. I'm your host, Angelo Roberts, and I have today with us Joel Salamon. He is a certified IP trainer and prosperity coach, but he is also the best-selling author of The 9 Money Rules Millionaires Use. And so I'd like to introduce him to the Ramblings today. How are you doing today?
Awesome, Angelo. Thanks so much for having me. It's a great pleasure and an extreme honor to be here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So thank you for joining. And one of the things, I'm going to kind of jump right into it. So I mentioned that you were a prosperity coach. Now I've never heard that before. So I'm not going to say we hear that often, but we do hear about the term financial advisor, financial coaches, money coaches. What is the difference between a prosperity coach and a money coach?
So yeah, to be clear, I'm not a financial planner. I'm not a financial advisor. All I do is coach.
Okay.
I shut down my hedge fund about 7 years ago to coach people. And a prosperity coach, or at least what I do, I'll tell you what I do, is I shift people's beliefs around money from limiting beliefs to empowering beliefs. I also teach people 10 specific money manifestation techniques. And then I also teach people DIY investing, how to do it yourself. And I actually have in the 9 Money Rules Millionaires Use, my bestseller from 2019, a five-step proprietary stock screen, as well as a 7-step real estate screen in that book. So people can use those as starting points to do it themselves, invest in stocks or invest in real estate. And the other thing I do is I work with emerging entrepreneurs who are not yet making a significant amount of money, use this proven techniques that others have used to increase their recurring revenues to a higher level.
I like that. Now, one of the things that we love to focus on this channel, especially because, as you mentioned, with people that aren't necessarily as financially successful as some of the other companies, is DIY, do it yourself. We are, king of DIY over here because we work with a lot of small business owners. And one of the things that I have found, especially with a lot of different service-based business owners, is they try to steer different entrepreneurs and founders and business owners actually away from doing DIY so that they're able to either, partner with them, either using their own services or a colleague services. What are your thoughts on, the DIY of a founder doing something versus them reaching out for help? What are your thoughts on it? And when do you feel that an owner should reach out for someone else versus doing things DIY?
No, it's a great question, Angelo. I think it's everyone's an individual, and that's how I coach. So everyone's in a different place in their journey, and you may have somebody who's very strong on mindset, and then you may have another entrepreneur who doesn't feel good with the uncertainty of revenues up and down from month to month. And so depending on where the person is, they may need more coaching or less coaching. And they may need somebody to come in and help them more early on or later, depending on their mindset, depending on their wisdom and where they are in their business, what their background is. There's some people I've been able to help who really have very little background on business planning, the numbers. I said before, I'm a former hedge fund manager. I invested in stocks most of my career. I'm an equity analyst, credit analyst, as well as an actuary. So I have a background with numbers. I have a background manipulating spreadsheets for the last 40 years. And I actually was teaching a client. I mostly teach entrepreneurs, but I do teach DIY investing to certain individuals. And this woman who came to me to join my new fast track prosperity coaching program, she had a windfall from her dance studio and she wanted to learn everything I know about stocks and stock investing. And so we started going through a process,
Mhm.
and then she worked with her husband to get put together a spreadsheet for my 5-step proprietary stock screen. And then we went advanced a bit. That's not in my book. We talked about price targets. And she had no experience with spreadsheets.
Wow.
And so when you're starting from that level, it's a little bit different than somebody who has, like me, 40 years of experience manipulating spreadsheets and creating earnings models and capital models for very complex companies in order to project out their earnings and equity for the next 3 to 5 years. That's what I did as a hedge fund manager, both at Citi and then my own hedge fund. So I have a little bit different experience than others. And so, depending on where you are in your education, your process, it's an individualized process. So, and by the way, the reason I'm doing what I'm doing, and the reason I shut down my hedge fund is there was a guy pitching stock options to 200 people
Mhm.
as the way to get rich. He said, you don't need much time, you don't need much money. This is how the rich people get rich. And options are essentially risk free. And I was sick to my stomach.
Mm.
200 people in the room, more than 50 or 60 ran to the back of the room to sign up for his program. And after I had people tapping me on the shoulder, whispering me, Joel, does this make sense? Are options really risk free? They didn't know. So after he was done, we went out of the auditorium. I told him, please don't do this. He has no idea about any of you individually, and most important, no idea about your belief
Right.
that you can become rich using options. And the reason why I tell that story is everyone's an individual. Everyone's on their own journey. And so to say that I'm going to coach you just like I would coach everyone else doesn't make any sense to me. Like the first thing I do is I have people fill out their financial freedom questionnaire or survey
Mhm.
and their money personality type survey because everyone's an individual and you have a money personality type and that changes in different situations at different points in your life as you have different experiences, and all this is important to understand because we're all individuals, we're all on different journeys, and so to coach everyone the exact same way doesn't make any sense to me.
I do agree with that. Now, one of the things that we do, or like the audiences that we focus on within our particular group, are what I like to call brink entrepreneurs. They are the ones that might have been in business for say 1, 2, 3 years. They have some kind of a semblance of business knowledge. They've gone through certain things. They've seen the other side past just getting started, getting your first few customers, making your first few mistakes. They're what we would call not necessarily seasoned, but they're relatively above that beginning starting point. I find that there's not a lot of information for those people on the brink, right? Everything before that is kind of fluff, which is, getting started, you know, putting together an LLC, putting together like business plans, paperwork, first customers, all the beginning stuff, which at this point for our entrepreneurs is going to feel like fluff or just before them. However, they're not at the point where they're able to use, say, a $500,000, marketing strategy. Not even say, let's say, a $50,000 marketing strategy, but they're looking at trying to find where they're able to carve out an ability to increase. What do you see as the biggest mental blocker for brink entrepreneurs trying to reach the next level?
No, it's a great question. And again, everyone's an individual. So like this may not apply to everyone. But what I think is there's
Most commonly, what do you see?
yeah, so the biggest thing I found for me and for my clients so far has been doubt.
Mm.
So you start on a trajectory and you start making 1,000, then 2,000, then 5,000, then 10,000 a month, and you're on a trajectory and you get to a certain level and then you go back down, and then that creates doubt.
Mm.
And what I teach is hashtag doubt the doubt. Doubt the doubt. Have faith in the dream. Don't have faith in your doubt. Have faith in the dream and the desire for your business to get to the next level, for the vision for that you already had. Go back to your original plan, your original vision, and have faith in the dream. Don't have faith in the doubt. Doubt the doubt. And so, like, when there's uncertainty, and look, I've had many months where I've had zero income. Okay, years ago. Now I have a lot of passive income.
Well, hold on. Before I actually move on for that, there's a lot of people, especially because we of the demographic of our age range, where I always preach about patience. Yet, for a lot of people, like you mentioned, you weren't really making an income for at a certain point. Obviously, as you mentioned, that was some years ago. But for the entrepreneurs that are at that stage right now, they're in that, as we would call it, ramen noodle diet phase, right? What is the mentality to be able to stay in that phase and still be hopeful while, you know, you have to see your friends going out to party, you have to see your friends getting married, colleagues getting promoted, and here you are seemingly at the bottom of a barrel? What is the mindset that you had to be in to be able to grind your way through something like that?
Great. Another great question, Angelo. So it's shifting the beliefs from limiting beliefs to empowering beliefs. And I'll just tell you a story. When I was about to start my hedge fund in 2012, so I had gotten laid off from Citigroup in early 2012. There was a law that said banks can't own hedge funds, so my whole division was laid off, which actually gave me the kick in the butt to realize my true dream, which was to have my own hedge fund. And so I went about the process, and I reached out to a number of companies, insurance companies in particular, that I had invested in, and they knew me, they knew my process. And two of them said, sure, we'll give you money, get everything else lined up and come back to us. So that was in the spring of 2012. And so I went through the process of hiring the service providers, the lawyer, the accountant, the fund administrator, the auditor, the prime broker. And I got that all lined up. I moved into my prime real estate in December of 2012. I was on 54th and Madison Avenue. I felt like I'd arrived, right? I can see Madison Avenue. And then I called up both of these insurance companies who had orally agreed to give me money, and they both backed out.
Oh,
I had no pipeline. I could have given up, but this was my dream. In fact, if you had asked me in 1992, Joel, what's your dream? It would have been hedge fund manager. So I'm 20 years later, I'm this close, and I could have given up. So what did I do? I acted as if we already had the money. I don't know if you know the term acting as if. It's pretending. I pretended. And so I acted as if we already had the investors. How did I do that? Well, first of all, the analyst that I was going to hire on January 1st, 2013, I called him up and I said, look, don't come in, work from home. He was the first work from home guy 11 years ago, right?
Look at you, ahead of the curve.
Ahead of the curve. And I said, just work from home. We have to pay for each seat. I really don't want to pay for you to come in, but we'll do calls and you're hired. And I'm just not going to pay you until the money comes in. He's like, no problem. I have faith in you. We'll get it going. So I hired him anyway. And then we would get on calls every day and act as if we had already had some stocks invested. We went to conferences and met with the companies that we were most interested in investing in. And then we followed up after those conferences, calling the companies and asking the tough questions. And I did something even more crazy. I put together a spreadsheet and I put in there the stocks that we were long, that we had purchased, quote unquote. And I put in there the stocks that we were short, betting that we're going to go down. And every day I calculated the amount of money we made that day, quote unquote. And I'd say, Sean, great day today. Keep it going. Great ideas. Or Sean, we just lost $1 million. We got to rejigger the portfolio. And we did this day after day. Now, I didn't just act as if, of course, I did go out and I banged the phones and I called everybody I knew. And I went to those hedge fund cocktail parties where there were family offices and people looking to invest in hedge funds. But I truly, and so on January 25th, I had a good meeting with another insurance company. And 60 days after that, we had a written agreement from them that they were investing in my company. And 2 months later, we were live. Now, I truly believe to this day, by acting as if we had the money, we got the money. So that's one thing you can practice in your business. What things can you do to act as if? Now, it doesn't mean I didn't spend money to
Right.
act as if, right? I pretended. I put together
The
the
daily
spreadsheet.
actions as if you were doing
You
it.
already have the
We had a
money.
meeting, we would have a normal stock meeting, but just because we don't have business doesn't mean we're not going to act as if we don't. We are going to stay ready so we don't have to get ready.
Exactly. And so in any business, you can do that. You know, if you're a coach and, you can continue, you can put out, the posts, the social posts every day as if you're, up and running. There was one client I taught in the last couple of months in my fast track one-on-one prosperity coaching program. And if you looked at him online, you would have thought, wow, this guy, he's killing it. He's speaking everywhere. He's putting up his posts every day. They're inspirational, and he's on the way to writing a book. He's clearly speaking in a lot of different places. But what was going on behind the scenes is he's working a full-time job, and he's doing this, in a half an hour to an hour in his free time to get his business up and running as an empowerment coach. And he's not making any money yet doing it, but he's acting as if
right.
He's there ready. And he's actually, telling people, look, I'm going to speak here. And he was doing some speaking, but not getting paid for it yet.
Right.
And
people don't know, they just know that you're there.
Right. And so he's getting out there doing the things that need to be done as if he's making, 20,000 a month. And he will be shortly.
Wow, I like that, because that's one of the big things, like, especially when I first started, when we started with Off Source, was the pretending a part of it, like okay, wake up, do a meeting, even if I don't have a meeting that has to be held, what can I do that would fill that role of having a meeting, whether it's doing research, whether it's making a call, whether it's, jumping on a meeting that might be networking to be able to just, enhance the network or anything. So I definitely agree with that approach. That's one of the things, because it just allows for you to get into the mood. It's kind of like practicing, but for business, you sometimes you can't practice certain things unless you actually do it. And so in business, that's one of the best ways. So I absolutely agree with that. Now, one of the things that you mentioned, and that I kind of want to dive into, is that when you were doing like these daily calls, right? You're saying, hey, we made money today, or we didn't make money today. We need to say revamp the portfolio. What were those meetings like with the internal members that also had the same knowledge of that this isn't like we're still as if? How do you keep, a team on track during an as if phase?
Yeah, it's just mindset. Like, if, I was positive, I had faith, I believed that this was going to work. And so that kind of, and I required them to do the due diligence on the companies as if we were going to be invested the next day. And so it was, the people I worked with, I hired people of the same ilk, of the same mindset, of the same positivity. And so they were really surprised, actually, in January 2016 when I shut it down to do this, because they still believed that we were going to get to managing 250, 300 million, which we weren't there yet. But the reason I shut it down was because of that guy up on stage telling 200 people, lying to 200 people that stock options were the way to get rich. But no, I mean, they were just as committed and positive as I was in the early months of 2013. And we did have progress, right? And we did have a great meeting. And I was excited. I'd come out of a meeting and I'd come back and I'd be high-fiving them, guys and women. We just had an amazing meeting. Like, money is about to flow in, and I did that on almost every meeting, even if the meeting wasn't great, because I knew they needed to be lifted up. They needed to keep their vibe high, and I needed to continue to pretend and continue to act as if. The other thing to do, by the way, as things are in early stages or past the early stages, is from a book, Who Not How, by Dan Sullivan, which it's a book about delegation.
Okay.
And it's funny because the author is Dan Sullivan, but Dr. Benjamin Hardy wrote 19 chapters and Dan Sullivan wrote one. It's a delegated book. It's a book about delegation, and Dan Sullivan delegated the book writing to this guy, which is awesome, right?
Wow.
And so anyway, the reason I bring it up is, how can you, as you're to a certain level, what things can you do to delegate to others that will keep you focused on the end goal? There are things that you're probably doing as a small business owner that could be delegated to a virtual assistant, right? There are things that you're doing that are not high value add, right? I tell all my clients, you're worth at least $250 an hour. What things are you doing that are not creating that value? And if it's, checking your emails, if it's like setting up calendar appointments, there are people around the globe who you can pay $5 an hour US or less to do these things, so that you can free up to do the high value add projects that are going to generate the revenues and income for the company. So that's something to think about all day, every day. And it's not a lot of money out of pocket, but if it actually is a massive return on investment when you start freeing up your time for high value added projects.
I do agree with that, especially considering that we do a lot of outsourcing and we are kings of outsourcing over here ourselves. So no, I think that this has been an amazing conversation. And so one of the things before we have to, get you off or anything, the 9 money rules millionaires use, right? That was your best-selling book. You mentioned in 2019. What was the inspiration behind that book?
Great question. So my first book is called Mindful Money Management. And when I wrote my first book, it was basically a memoir. It's Mindful Money Management, Memoirs of a Hedge Fund Manager. And so that book was a lot of lessons learned between the lines, right? So it gave people my experience, but from that experience, what lessons I learned. And a lot of it. So what happened was, a lot of people read the book, but a few people gave me comments and said, this would have been an even better book if you had listed the lessons learned. And I was like, oh my God, that's my next book, 9 Money Rules. And so while like the feedback I got from Mindful Money Management was the impetus for the 9 Money Rules Millionaires use. So it's funny because I start out the 9 Money Rules saying, I'm not a rules guy. So I'm like the anti-rules guy. So the last 3 years have been really tough for me, because if you tell me I have to wear a mask, I'm probably like, oh, I got to do something that I'm not good with, like consensus. Like I'm the contrarian investor. So if the world's doing something, I'm probably like over here. If you tell me I can't jump out of a plane, I'm going to jump out of that plane. Right?
Okay, so I guess I'll ask this question before we officially have to let go. Is what is your most contrarian thought, and what has been your most contrarian action?
So the most contrarian of the 9 money rules, I believe, is rule number 9: don't diversify. Don't
Mm.
diversify. And I will tell you, as a former hedge fund manager, having my own hedge fund and managing 700 million at Citi, that my top 3 to 5 ideas each year, my highest conviction ideas, made me more than 100% of the return for that year. Top 3 to 5. And the other 40, 50, 60 lost me money. Now, I had to be, quote unquote, diversified according to SEC rules, the Securities and Exchange Commission, but that hurt my returns. And I think Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's partner at Berkshire Hathaway, I don't know if he's worth 10 billion or 20, whatever. It's a large number. He said, if you know nothing, diversify.
Right.
Warren Buffett himself said, if I could, there are times that I would have invested more than 50% of my net worth in one investment.
I like that.
So I answered part of your question, I think.
Yes, the thought. Now, what is your most contrarian action?
So I think my most contrarian action, and people to this day are asking me, why did you shut down your hedge fund? Like, that was your dream. And I shut it down to coach people because of that guy up on stage, realizing that there are a lot of people out there that are teaching people lies about money.
Right.
And I figured, I can tell people the truth, be of service, and help others, tell them the truth about money. And so I also realized I could be helping a lot more people than just a small number of very rich and a large insurance company make money. I could help large numbers by teaching them that they can do it themselves. So maybe that's my most contrarian action.
Wow, that's especially for the finance market that you're in. That would be very contrarian to give up such prestige to be able to help people that don't even have the same level of prestige. So very, very noble. And so one of the things that we always ask before people get out of here and everything is, where can we find you on social media, website, podcast? Obviously, guys, as you know, links will always be in the description, but from the horse's mouth, as they say, where can we find you?
So first of all, Salomon.com, as you see here, SALAURMOR.com. That's named, my company name is named after my daughters, Lauren and Morgan. LAUR, and for Lauren.
Oh, I didn't know that. I love a family company name that has to do with the family. My dad is in real estate. His company is called And Son, which abbreviated stands for Ain't No Stopping Us Now, which, as some people know, was a very popular song back in like
I know it,
like that. But also stands for Angelo and Sons.
Nice, awesome, love it. Yeah, so I copied him. So Salomon.com, and I'm actually what I'm one of the probably 5 most proud things I am in this lifetime is I overcame my fear of public speaking and gave a TEDx talk. So a love for you, Angelo, and anybody who's watching, listening, to take a look at how to create money miracles on YouTube. Just Google my name and how to create money miracles.
I will post it. I have the link. It is a great video. I did have an opportunity to watch it. And so, Ramblers, as you know, we never bring on a Slack guest onto this podcast. And so the link will be in the description to be able to find the YouTube. Do you have any socials? Where can we find you on social?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. It's Joel Prosperity Salomon, all one word, SALOMON. So Salomon. So Joel Prosperity Salomon on TikTok, on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn.
I like that on the TikTok. I didn't think you were gonna say TikTok, but I like that you're up there. That means you're trying to really expand to the masses.
I mean, there's billions on there, so you go where the people are.
I do agree. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such a pleasure, and until next time.
Thank you so much, Angelo. It was great interview. Appreciate you.
Hey, Ramblers, that's it. Podcast is over. Don't leave yet, though. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, and follow us on YouTube at Offsource HQ. We'll see you next time.